The Army Hour, in cooperation with the Mutual Network, presents Korea, a Decade of Courage. It is now 10 years since the shooting war in Korea came to a halt. The signing of the military armistice agreement brought a truce. But remember, it is only that. Only a halt in battle. And remember also that in the 3 years when the battle raged, more than 2 million men, women, and children lost their lives. Will the communist hordes again mount a surprise attack? That we do not know. But what we do know is that the United Nations Command is ready to defend the principles for which the free world stands. We do know that in this decade of courage, the troops of the United Nations Command have made it crystal clear that they are there to stem the flow of communism into South Korea. Every day, every night for 10 years, the 8th United States Army and the Republic of Korea Army, as part of the United Nations Command, have faced the threat of the enemy, an enemy of 2.5 million soldiers of the Red Chinese Army, plus 350,000 men of the North Korean Army. There is no peace in Korea today, only a truce. For the guns of both sides are in position, the ammunition ready for loading, and the armies still face each other across the no-man's land of the demilitarized zone. And now, to look at this decade of courage, it is well to recall what happened just before. What you are about to hear next is real, an actual recording of Korea in war. This is Night Patrol 1953. We turn back in time for the voices of men at war and the sounds of battle, as combat correspondent Sergeant Bob Neiman in Korea reports from a night patrol moving into enemy territory on Old Baldy. As the men are about to shove off, Sergeant Neiman gets a few reactions on the mission from the sergeant who is to lead the patrol.
Sergeant, you, what is your job here tonight?
Patrol here.
We had some interruption there. What was that again, please?
I'm patrol leader tonight for patrol.
This patrol, of course, is going up Old Baldy, is that right?
That's right.
Well, what is your primary mission? Is it for a contact?
Yes, a contact patrol. Actually, I guess to see if there's any enemy on the, anywhere around there, our objective, which of course I think there is. We all think that too.
Yes, there were some spotted today, weren't there?
I don't know. They said, when I looked through the BC scope, King Company Outpost, I got a good look over the area. I didn't see that, but of course I was only there about 20 minutes.
Is there anything particularly unpleasant about making a patrol on a night like this?
Well, some say there is, some say there isn't. I really don't know what to say.
Well,
I mean, the moon's out and bright, they can see you. Maybe you can even see them too. I don't know. I just think the moon is quite too bright.
That's your own personal preference.
Yeah, that's my own personal preference, yes.
Well, we hope everything goes along all right.
Well, I do too. I think it will.
You've got some supporting elements and everything, so...
We have everything at the board, practically.
Okay, so we don't worry about those things until they happen, right?
Right.
Okay, well, thanks a lot, Sergeant.
Okay.
The patrol is now ready to move out. Sergeant Neiman wears an armored vest. His tape recorder hangs from his shoulder. Contact with the enemy may come at any minute. The men speak only under the cover of gunfire. As they reach Mortar Valley, the enemy rains in 1,600 rounds of mortar and artillery. Sergeant Neiman is about to record one of the most terrifying combat experiences as he is caught in a barrage of enemy mortar and artillery fire. The scream of enemy 120 millimeter artillery shells coming at him. landing so close it knocked him down, and his microphone was switched off by the impact.
At this moment, the men have fallen into formation and are moving out toward the objective across an open valley, completely under the observation of the enemy. As you can tell from the firing in the background, there's a great deal of activity in preparation for a patrol. That's friendly fire, you hear? H&I fire against the enemy across the valley in Old Baldy. In a moment, we'll be around the corner. What is referred to as no man's land. Those are mortars dropping in. This might be what you'd call sitting under the gun. It's getting too close. That's the big stuff coming in now. James have unquestionably spotted it. There's been some big stuff coming in here. Some 120s. It makes a terrific howl.
From this point on, the recording could not be continued. Complete silence was necessary. The patrol reached Old Baldy, but no contact was made with the enemy. Perhaps the men watched from the shadows, but they did not make their presence known, and the patrol returned to its base without casualties. That was a fragment, a minute fragment of Korea in wartime. Then the guns stopped, and the decade of courage began. War is a harrowing thing for the people who felt its violence. And here, through the eyes of some American soldiers who fought it, is a picture of Korean refugees when the war was over.
They were shifting. It looked like gypsies. They were traveling from village to village, hungry and sad condition, I would say, sir.
Well, as we moved more or less north and also to the west on this perimeter defense, there were just hordes of people moving towards Pusan with these tremendous loads on their back. They used sort of a wooden A-frame, they call it, and they looked like they had all their worldly possessions on it, and they were just trotting towards Pusan.
Everywhere you went, you were followed by small children. Children of between the ages of anywhere from 2 on up to 15 years of age and older. They were constantly pulling on your clothes, following you around everywhere you went, and begging for dimes, pennies, anything you could give them, chewing gum, chocolate bars. And if you got through a pack of chewing gum out, believe me, it was a mad scramble.
Well, South Korean people struck me as a proud race, but yet at the same time they were starving to death. At that time, I've seen people living in caves, homes being rebuilt which had half mud walls, half canvas, maybe a piece of corrugated metal. Very hungry. You could see children going into these garbage dumps and also taking a very great chance of breaking into compounds after dark to steal chocolate, even a candy bar, at the chance of being shot to death.
And the devastation of a city in the aftermath of war.
Seoul was badly beaten while I was there.
Well, Seoul, it looked like any other devastated area that you would normally see that had been subjected to heavy concentration of fire.
But I think I was among the first Americans to come back into Seoul after we'd been driven out in 1950. As a matter of fact, I rode in a Jeep convoy with General MacArthur. At this time, there were no streetcars and there were no lights. Most of the buildings had the windows broken out. The Capitol building had either had a fire or been hit directly by a bomb. The railroad station was an awful mess, but the people were all happy. The streets were strewn with great big signs, "Welcome UN heroes, help us drive the communists north."
In the aftermath of war come the names of places. A name like Porkchop Hill. Only a few men survived that bloody battle. Sergeant Charles Hunter of the 7th Division is one of them. And with our Pacific reporter, Will Thompson, he looks at that area again.
Sergeant Hunter, I guess you know this ground pretty well. What is that higher hill to the left of Porkchop?
That is Baldy to the left of it.
And well named. That has nothing on it. Well, does it all look pretty familiar to you, Sergeant?
Very familiar, except it has grown quite a bit of vegetation since then.
Sergeant Hunter, let's start with the present and work back to that day. What's your outfit now, and what's your job?
Well, I am platoon sergeant of headquarters platoon in the C Company of the 40th Armor.
That's the 7th Division.
That's correct.
Well, what happened at Porkchop Hill that day?
During the night, the word was passed on to the company to withdraw, to regroup and resupply. And due to my position in the company, I did not receive this word, and me and 6 of my men were cut off by the communists when my company withdrew.
So there were 7 of you left, did you say, about on top of Porkchop Hill?
No, sir. We were down on the forward slope about 10 yards from the top of the hill in a machine gun position. We immediately realized that we were alone, and we started to try to make our withdrawal, and we noticed on the right and left of us that the North Koreans were closing in on us, so we immediately ran to the top of the hill in the trench, of course, and then we observed troops or North Koreans coming up behind us.
Sergeant Hunter, do you think we can see the spot from here? It's quite a long distance, but do you think we can see it where you dug in up there?
Due to the time element and the growth and the shifting of the sand, I don't believe it would be possible.
About how many Chinese or North Koreans were coming up the hill at you, do you know?
Well, they came in waves, and the best I could tell when it first started, there would be what we call a company of about 200 men.
So how long were you up there on top of Porkchop Hill?
Well, before the battle began, I was there approximately a week on this particular position, and during this battle, which lasted 36 hours, and for about 10 hours after the battle was over.
You were completely surrounded. How close were the communists to you?
Within 10 feet.
What did you do for food and ammunition?
Well, we completely expended our food and ammunition with the exception of 1 round of 30 caliber ammunition we had in one of the weapons.
Sergeant, you were up there 36 hours. Did you and the rest of the men up there give up hope of ever being rescued by our side?
Not completely. We didn't have time to give up hope.
Sergeant Hunter, you were holding it. Then you did get help from the rear. And how many men got out of this whole Porkchop Hill battle?
18.
18 out of 2 companies. Thank you very much, Sergeant Charles Hunter, at this observation post overlooking the demilitarized zone and Porkchop Hill in Korea.
In this decade of courage, troops of the United Nations Command have always been at the ready to prevent another surprise attack by the communists or to defeat it if it comes. And new troops are always arriving to replace those leaving.
I'm a soldier. A few months ago, I was a civilian working in my dad's store. Of Korea to me was a place I'd only heard about from the guys who'd been there. A name on a map, a story in a magazine, maybe. And then one day, Uncle Sam tapped me on the shoulder and put me on board one of these C-124 troop transports. Destination, Korea. We marched out of the plane after the long trip. After we picked up our baggage, we climbed on buses that were waiting for us, labeled Ashdown City.
Good afternoon, men. On behalf of the Commanding General of the 8th United States Army, of which you are now a member, welcome to Korea. At some time or other, since you found out you were coming to Korea, each of you has probably asked himself, why am I going to Korea? Surprisingly enough, not many personnel coming through here do know the answer. In the United States, we are governed by men whom you and I have elected to public office, and who speak for us on all matters which affect our country. These men, after considering what is best for our country, have given their word that the United States will defend and protect the people of Korea from communist aggression.
Even before they arrive, the men who come to Korea think it's going to be tough, and tough it is. In the summer, the dust is another enemy. Choking, blinding dust that suffocates you and seems to become a part of everything you wear, everything you eat. The winters here are cold and bleak and penetrating. The lion-tawny hills that pressed around you in the summer become granite, bleak, forbidding mountains. The snow closes in, and the paddy fields show black stubbles through the blue ice. And even the trees have gone, for what nature leaves is little, and after the woodcutters have passed, there is even less. But whatever the weather, work goes on every day. The task of guarding the frontiers of freedom involves more than the guarding of a border. There's food to cook, typewriters to pound, books to keep, communications to maintain, training, learning, polishing, and drilling, and the thousands of jobs that are needed to keep an army fighting fit and in the field. Helicopters are ready night and day for special missions or to carry wounded men speedily to the hospital. And jets rip open the Korean skies with their urgent screams. Animals, too, play their part, and here dogs are being trained to smell out the enemy and attack.
These dogs are not trained to kill a man. Their primary mission is to detect and warn the handler of the presence of an intruder or a suspicious person.
Machinery, too, is constantly at the ready, and huge tanks wrestle with the mud or dust. And when night falls, tonight and every night, the eyes of the 8th Army and their allies peer into the alien darkness, constantly on the watch. For it must be remembered that the war in Korea is not over. It is merely in a state of truce, and the Army is not just there in position, but is on constant alert 24 hours of every day.
And so the new soldier is now in Korea, and he knows why. He knows, too, he may soon be guarding freedom on the DMZ, the demilitarized zone, that lonely stretch of no man's land that separates North and South Korea.
You can see I have part of the unit located here, the major units in the division. Now, we have 241 square miles area to cover. We have 18 miles of the front line. That includes the DMZ from this point to this point.
Meetings are held frequently at Panmunjom, with the UN officers on one side of the table and the communists on the other. Here is the voice of the enemy.
Peaceful settlement of the Korean question. You must not interfere in the domestic affairs of Korea, but take your blood-stained hands off her.
Now we move to the compound outside. Communists shout angrily as we approach with camera and recorder. Now we look across into North Korea.
If you'll notice the bridge down here, this is the bridge of no return, which all the prisoners were exchanged from both sides. This little green guard post down here is one of our guard posts, and it's known as the world's loneliest guard post.
Now we stand in the security office at the DMZ.
Use the South Korean nationals as interpreters. When we call a message over to the communists, we will ring them up on this telephone, first giving them the English version of the message, and the interpreter will give them the Korean version.
An actual phone conversation to the Reds on a Russian-made telephone.
During this decade of courage, the guns have been silent, but for the soldier, much remains the same. The constant training, the constant watching, the constant readiness. And when darkness falls, there is Night Patrol 1963.
Each night, in a small security hut, the men are briefed. Their faces are blackened. They wear rubber boots for maximum silence. And the weapons they carry are loaded, ready.
Number one, a mission to apprehend any unauthorized personnel within the demilitarized zone. In the event you have any radio difficulties at all, you will have a red star and a green star cluster. Your green star cluster will indicate that you have some emergency. This means one of your patrol members has accidentally hurt himself. You need some assistance. In the event you fire the red cluster, this will mean that the North Koreans have again initiated hostilities against South Korea.
They move up to the area in a jeep that rides the rough roads with no lights. They leave the jeep and walk off into the blackness. Constantly watching and listening.
Okay, we'll stake out here for an hour or so. You get me these bushes right here. And when it's time to leave, I'll come get you.
And after a while, they walk back through the dark and the mud and the bushes, down rough, dangerous trails, often passing communist patrols within yards, always on the alert until relieved by the next patrol.
With green patrol, over.
This is Satellite 4-1.
This is no exercise, but the real thing. A vital part of our very real fight for existence against the enemy. The same enemy that swarmed into South Korea on the 25th of June, 1950.
This special Army Hour program, Korea, A Decade of Courage, was produced by the Department of the Army. And our sincerest salute to the troops of the United Nations Command for their magnificent efforts. Script and production by David B. Eskind. This is Sergeant Major Donald Cosgrove speaking.
Army Hour has come to you through the worldwide facilities of the United States Armed Forces Radio and Television Service.